Modern day police brutality is the evolution of lynching. You know, after the Civil War, there was an increase of lynching within the South. And this was, you know, state-sanctioned violence against African Americans, men, women, and children. A lot of people who were in their cells waiting for trial were, visited in the night by mobs, taken out and hung. There was no jury, there was no trial, there was no judge. When we see these videos circulating of people like Eric Garner saying, "I can't breathe," we see Sandra Bland being pulled out of a car, it becomes spectacle, just like the spectacle of lynching that happened post-Civil War. And like we see with Eric Garner saying that he couldn't breathe, millions of people saw that video. And the perpetrators of that crime did not go to jail. Lynching was definitely, was an act of terror to instill fear in the African American population within the South. It just seems that every week, every month, there's a new black boy, there's a new black woman, there's a new black man who is shot, who is killed. And the officers that do this, or the street vigilantes that do this, are not arrested, or they're not tried, or they're, the most that happens to them is that they lose their jobs. What the government is saying to us is that black bodies do not matter. Throughout our history in this country, they have told us this. They have told us this with the bombing of the 4 little girls in the church and those people not going to jail. They have told us this with the Trayvon Martins and George Zimmerman not going to jail. They have told us this through Hurricane Katrina and the way the black people of New Orleans were treated. We're constantly told that our lives do not matter. Another thing with lynching was that this was a spectacle. Families came, it was an event, people brought food. So even though, we look at this, like this happened in the 1870s, this happened so long ago, we could never do that again. We would never sit around and watch somebody be hung. We do sit around and we click on YouTube and we watch as Philando Castil's girlfriend is screaming and crying that they've shot her boyfriend. So all these terrifying things, they're just transformed terror. They've taken on new shapes, they've taken on new forms. It amazes me that even though we're able to see a human being losing their life on screen, people will still debate whether that person was right or wrong. People will still have a rush to judgment. I remember when Trayvon Martin was shot, there were images of him, putting up the middle finger and putting up his gold teeth, and you just see a parallel where they're trying to demonize the victims of these police shootings. It's basically, trying the dead and convicting the dead and making them the guilty party because they're black. Like, you kind of ask yourself, what does it take for, justice to be served? What does it take for people to have empathy for black people? Most people are becoming numb to seeing black people being mistreated on video, because we don't only see death. Like, yes, we see a lot of death, we see a lot of, grotesque things, but then we also see black bodies just kind of being treated as less than human. When we say Black Lives Matter, it's just to remind people that, Black lives matter, because people tend to forget when it comes to black people that we're human beings, unfortunately. Tamir Rice was a little boy and he was shot dead. People forget that children are being shot too. Like, our children are children just like your children are children. I think it's important for people to have empathy and to understand that, nobody wants to be rioting. Nobody wants to be on the street, mad and angry. This is a result of state-sanctioned violence. And if we can get cops to not fear the communities that they police, but to develop relationships with black and brown people within the communities that they police, that would be a great first step. I would hope that people look back on this time as kind of like a breaking point, where we have the choice to say that we're not going to be like our ancestors, that we're going to do things differently.